This is VOA Africa.
Good evening, I'm Esther Githuyu. It's Tuesday, December 3rd. This is Africa 54. Save the Children calls on wealthy nations to cut emissions at a faster pace. Disabled Ghanaians speak out about job security and cultural understanding. And the United Nations leads the bid for cheaper insulin to expand access for diabetics worldwide. Tens of millions of people in southern and eastern Africa are facing emergency food insecurity, partly caused by climate change, and 50% are children, according to the charity Save the Children. The regions have been hit by extreme cyclones, flooding, and drought in recent months, and scientists warn the region is warming much faster than other parts of the world. Henry Ridgewell has more.
Cyclone Idai smashed into Mozambique in March this year, killing thousands of people and destroying entire settlements. The storm, one of the biggest on record, is estimated to have caused more than $2 billion worth of damage across the region. A month later, Mozambique was hit by another storm, Cyclone Kenneth, killing dozens more people.
Never before has this country been hit by two cyclones in the same season.
Save the Children says 2019 will be remembered as the year that the climate crisis devastated parts of eastern and southern Africa. The charity warns that climate change contributes to at least 33 million people in the region facing emergency levels of food insecurity, with more than 16 million of them children.
The link to climate change is actually the compounding effect of emergency after emergency after emergency. So the ability for people to recover from a shock, like a drought or a flood at the moment even, is getting less and less and less, and therefore their livelihoods are slowly but surely being eroded and literally washed away.
A 2015 Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change report shows temperatures rising in southern Africa at twice the global rate. Save the Children says leaders of industrialized nations must commit to bigger cuts in greenhouse gas emissions and greater support for those most affected by climate change.
If you are a child growing up in eastern and southern Africa, your chances of survival are currently being affected by actions that are taken by people in a completely different part of the world to which you have very little control or effect on.
29,000 delegates are meeting in Madrid for the COP25 climate conference. US President Donald Trump is not attending, having withdrawn from the landmark Paris Climate Agreement, which he says would unfairly penalise the United States economy. Henry Ridgewell for VOA News, London.
Talks on climate change have opened in Madrid amid stark warnings that soon it may be too late to prevent catastrophic consequences of global warming. Lisa Brandt explains.
There were smiles and handshakes among world leaders, but the message at this climate conference is deadly serious. Climate change, says UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres, is heading to a point of no return.
Do we really want to be remembered as the generation that buried its head in the sand, that fiddled while the planet burned?
Known as COP25, the 2 weeks of talks here in Madrid aim to push countries to deepen their greenhouse gas cutting commitments so global warming is capped at no more than 1.5 degrees centigrade above pre-industrial levels. Beyond that, scientists warn the planet will face catastrophic consequences. A slew of UN reports in recent months have backed up those warnings, even as greenhouse gas emissions hit a new record last year.
We need a rapid and deep change in the way we do business, how we generate power, how we build cities, how we move, and how we feed the world.
The meeting also aims to finalize rules for implementing the 2015 Paris Climate Pact. Key areas include emission trading rules and compensating poorer countries hit by climate change.
We're demanding that big industrialized countries, the polluters, honor their engagements.
The U.S. federal government has announced it will pull out of the Paris Agreement by next November. But some American states and cities have not given up on the pact, and a U.S. congressional delegation was at Monday's opening. Lisa Bryant for VOA News, Madrid.
The United Nations has troubling news for Zimbabwe, warning Tuesday of the country's worst hunger crisis in more than a decade. The UN says 50% of the country's population is food insecure, adding that it plans to procure food assistance for 4 million Zimbabweans as shortages are being exacerbated by inflation and climate-induced drought. The World Food Programme says it is concerned the situation might worsen for the country's nearly 8 million food insecure people, with no improvements and no rain in sight for the main growing season. The agency plans to buy maize from Tanzania as well as from Mexico and edible seeds from Kenya. Some 240,000 tons of food aid is to be distributed. Tuesday is the United Nations International Day of Persons with Disabilities. Legal protections and customary practices for disabled Africans vary from country to country. In Ghana, disabled people have had many legal protections since 2006. VOA's Kwame Asante Ofori spoke with disabled Ghanaians about job security and cultural understanding.
When I was in our village, I wasn't idle. I used to sell charcoal, polythene bags. In fact, I loved business. On certain mornings, I could cook gari with beans to sell. It gained me a small allowance, which could bring me to the big city. I was so desperate to come that even if it meant sleeping outside, I would and gradually find something. I didn't know where to go, so I used to sleep on the street to try to find a job or help. Someone said they wanted to sell their small kiosks. I sought to help, and I used whatever I got to buy the kiosks. That's how I gradually began to grow. When that was done, I started receiving trainees to learn the trade. I have trained so many students who have now graduated from here and are working on their own. They are able to feed themselves.
I studied a vocation course, but I didn't get any work. And now I'm on these streets so I can get my daily bread to take care of myself. Or if they even put me in a school, I could teach them.
It's a challenge, for them to compete for jobs. If you have a job placement for one person and there are 10 people applying, I dare stick my neck out that they will pick the one who is so-called normal and leave this one just because of the disability.
I believe the understanding of our people on these issues is low. We never think that someone who has a disability would be able to do or achieve what someone considered an unabled person could. So indeed, our understanding of things is low. As of now, when the government has passed a law, still now people are in the dark about these issues. They are still treating the disabled badly. They hide them in rooms. Some don't send their kids with disability to school. Even when you are going to look for a job as a person with disability, you are denied because of your situation.
We are going to fight on until we have a policy to employ all persons with disability, especially graduates who have completed, struggled and completed university and are in the house.
There are incentives for people who employ disabled people. So you have some tax holidays for businesses who decide to employ people who have disability. Now, this is a law, and that's how it's been working. Unless, of course, maybe somebody is ignorance about the law, so that even though you have employed somebody, you have not applied for what is due you, in terms of the tax holidays and incentives that I've talked about, but that is the position of the law.
That was Kwame Asante Ofori reporting. Be sure to join Africa 54 tomorrow for part 2 of our series marking the UN Day of Persons with Disabilities, when we'll hear about the need for public education to help change perceptions. The U.S. House Intelligence Committee on Tuesday is expected to publicly release a report on its findings and recommendations in the impeachment inquiry into President Donald Trump. Committee Chairman Adam Schiff told the American cable network MSNBC late Monday that the panel would vote Tuesday night on formally submitting it to the Judiciary Committee, whose members will decide whether to draw up articles of impeachment against Trump. The president will not be represented at the Judiciary Committee meeting. Before leaving Washington Monday, Trump slammed the impeachment process and Democrats behind it. Trump also criticized Democrats for holding the hearing at the time he will be attending the NATO Leaders Summit in London. Trump is accused of holding up nearly $400 million in badly needed military aid to Ukraine in exchange for a public commitment to investigate former Vice President Joe Biden and his son Hunter for alleged corruption. Donald Trump faces a process that could end with his removal as President of the United States. Impeachment hearings underway now in the House of Representatives represent the beginning part of what is prescribed by the U.S. Constitution. In today's installment of American Impeachment, VOA Steve Redish explains one of the more vague aspects of impeachment: high crimes and misdemeanors.
There is just one mention in the U.S. Constitution about the criteria for impeaching and removing a president. Article 2, Section 4 of the Constitution reads, "The president shall be removed from office on impeachment for and conviction of treason, bribery, or other high crimes and misdemeanors." Treason and bribery are specific crimes, but those last 4 words, high crimes and misdemeanors, provoke the most debate. The phrase comes from British law, putting impeachment of high-level public officials beyond statutory laws.
It was an important feature because one of the things the framers of the Constitution really wanted to make sure is that they didn't have another king.
Constitution signer and interpreter Alexander Hamilton said the nature of impeachment is political, necessary for offenses that stem from what he called the abuse or violation of some public trust. Nearly 2 centuries later, Congressman and future President Gerald Ford, who became president in 1974 after Richard Nixon quit before potentially being impeached, said an impeachable offense is whatever the majority of the House of Representatives considers it to be at a given moment in history.
It doesn't have to be necessarily a crime in the law books. If a president just simply played golf all day or watched television all day or just didn't do president's job, many think that would be an abuse of his office and worth removing him from.
4 of the 45 U.S. presidents faced an impeachment inquiry. Andrew Johnson was impeached for defying Congress by firing the Secretary of War. Richard Nixon resigned before the House of Representatives could vote on articles of impeachment that accused him of obstructing the investigation of a burglary at the opposing political party headquarters in the Watergate Hotel. Bill Clinton was impeached for lying about a sexual affair with a White House intern, but remained as president because while the House of Representatives voted to impeach Clinton, the Senate acquitted him in a trial in 1999. Donald Trump faces an impeachment vote for his conduct of foreign policy, pressuring the Ukrainian government to investigate a political rival. Rules for the road ahead are vague, determined by the politicians in charge of the U.S. Congress. Steve Redish, VOA News.
Be sure to join us Wednesday as VOA Steve Redish takes you through the responsibilities of the U.S. House of Representatives during the impeachment process. We'll be right back.
I'm Clara Frank, and here's what's trending. Cyber Monday sales in 2019 are reaching new records as the ease of shopping on the internet beats hopping in the car to head to the mall. Shoppers were expected to ring up a whopping and record $9 billion online on Monday, up 17% from a year ago, with people spending an estimated $11 million every minute from 11 p.m. Eastern Time to midnight, according to Adobe Analytics. Monday was also expected to become the first day in history where consumers spent over $3 billion in a 24-hour window via their smartphones. Next up, training hard, Philippine esports team Cebol is hoping to take home a gold medal this December. For the first time, esports is appearing as a medal event at the Southeast Asian Games, this year being held in the Philippines. It will be one of 56 sports, along with more traditional games such as basketball and football. The global esports market is expected to surge to $1.1 billion this year, up $230 million from 2018 on growth in sponsorships, merchandise, and ticket sales, according to Newzoo. The global esports audience is expected to grow in 2019 to about 454 million, as fans tune in on live streaming platforms such as Twitch and Microsoft's Mixer. And finally, no bargain hunters here at the luxurious shopping event. Only premium and luxury brands are invited to come, with an emphasis on small, exclusive producers of boutique luxury. It's known as the event for those who think they have everything. The watchwords this year are handcrafted and artisanal, but there's also room for adventure. The company Seamagine believes this nifty little submersible makes a perfect stocking filler. If you have enough paper, it can be wrapped up and mysteriously left under the tree, a very large Christmas tree. As well as sailing on the 7 seas, you can now take your special +1 on a trip to explore beneath the waves. And that's what's trending today.
U.S. President Donald Trump on Tuesday criticized French President Emmanuel Macron for his recent statement describing NATO as experiencing brain death, saying the French leader's comment was, quote, a nasty statement. Speaking ahead of the NATO summit in London, Trump seemed to suggest the French leader was in no position to criticize NATO with the issues he is facing at home.
It's a very tough statement to make when you have such difficulty in France. You look at what's happened with the yellow vests, or you look at what's going on during certain parts of their season. They've had a very rough year. And you just can't go around making statements like that about NATO. It's very disrespectful.
Macron's comments came during an interview with the London-based magazine The Economist, published last month. He has since defended his words, saying NATO needed a wake-up call and should be focused on issues rather than the amount of money each member spends on its military. Defense spending has been a focus for Trump since he took office in 2017 and complained America was taking on an outsized financial burden. It's time for our health report, and joining us now is A54 Health correspondent Lino Mudu with a look at a campaign aimed at breaking sex education taboos in South Sudan. Hello, Lino.
Hello, Esther, and that's right. A campaign in South Sudan aims to dispel some misconceptions about sex and condoms. The Condomize campaign in South Sudan aims to break taboos surrounding sex and sex education. The campaign, organized by the OK Africa Foundation in partnership with the government, highlights that despite making great strides in raising awareness about HIV/AIDS worldwide, many are still at risk. Campaigners are distributing over 5,000 condoms and stressing its importance to youth. Observers say taboos are the major drivers behind the spread of HIV, for which the campaign has also set up testing and counseling rooms.
Our South Sudanese culture and that taboo thing is always there, that don't talk about sex, you know? especially where elders are sitting and you don't mention these kind of things, you know. But it's good for us to break these taboos and to come up with, you know, to have a new mindset, a good mindset, which is, you know, we need to educate and give awareness to our youth and to our, even to the old people.
In terms of those who are living with the disease right now, we're talking about 190,000 people living with HIV. But those are people who are able to at least test and know their HIV status. It could even be more, because this is even less than 500,000, it's less than 1 million. And we're very certain that if all people really get to test and know their HIV status, then there's a possibility that we'll have more and more people who are already with the virus.
According to organizers, the campaign was motivated by a lack of awareness among the youth on how to stop the spread of HIV/AIDS. Now, the World Health Organization has announced the start of a pilot program to pre-qualify human insulin to increase treatment for diabetes in low and middle-income countries. The decision is part of a series of steps the World Health Organization is expected to take to address the growing diabetes burden in all regions. Diabetes is a chronic disease characterized by elevated levels of blood glucose when the pancreas does not produce enough insulin, a hormone that regulates blood sugar, or when the body cannot effectively use the insulin it produces.
Insulin is a hormone secreted by the pancreas and is crucial in the metabolism of carbohydrate, fat, and protein. Lack of insulin, for whatever reason, leads to complications that are deadly and often debilitating as well. So insulin, if there isn't enough of it produced by the body or it doesn't work properly, needs to be replaced by injections.
About 65 million people with type 2 diabetes need insulin, but only half of them are able to access it. All people with type 1 diabetes need insulin to survive. The medicine works by lowering blood glucose levels. The WHO's 2-year pilot project involves the evaluation of insulin developed by manufacturers to ensure their quality, safety, efficacy, and affordability.
One of the reasons why insulin is so expensive is because there's only a limited number of companies that are actually commercializing it, and they have control over the price setting. If we bring new entrants into the market, we hope to expand the competition, and this will have an impact on prices and will mean that more patients, particularly in low and middle-income countries, have access to the insulin that they need to survive.
Insulin pre-qualification is one of a number of steps the WHO will take in the coming year to address the diabetes burden. Other plans include updating diabetes treatment guidelines and improving access to diagnostics. WHO also works with countries to promote healthier diets and physical activity to lower people's risk of developing type 2 diabetes. More than 420 million people live with diabetes worldwide. Diabetes can lead to complications such as heart attacks, stroke, kidney failure, blindness, and lower limb amputations. Have you ever thought about your posture while you were using a cell phone or a computer? Well, researchers have found that most people don't, but it's something everyone should think about. VOA's Carol Pearson explains.
Cell phones and computers are just about everywhere on Earth. People hunch over these devices, and it causes more harm than they realize. When Dr. Lushanka Gunasekera began feeling pain, he thought he needed strength training.
It was mainly pain in my upper back and neck and shoulder area, and it was just on the one side.
A fitness trainer at the Orlando Health Gym knew the pain was due to poor posture.
Internally rotated shoulders, rounded back, head is down, neck is down.
Melendez worked with Gunasekera on his posture.
There, up, right there. Perfect.
All that hunching or jutting your head forward to look at a screen compresses your neck muscles. This causes fatigue, muscle tension, and headaches. It can also injure the vertebrae in your back, but it can be prevented and corrected.
You'd be surprised what strengthening your core and doing postural corrective exercises can do for your body.
Melendez says even being slightly unaligned can cause major strain, but researchers at Orlando Health found that less than half the Americans they surveyed seemed to care. Even a slight misalignment can cause major strain. For every 2.5 centimeters your head moves in front of your body, 4.5 kilograms of pressure is added to your shoulders. If you move your head forward 100 millimeters, the weight imbalance is even greater.
That's like equivalent to having a child sit on your shoulders.
Gunasekara says changing his posture made a huge difference.
Discussing what I was doing incorrectly, doing more core exercises, more mobility, being cognizant every day about my posture, it's really helped out, and now I don't have pain there anymore.
Melendez says while you're using a computer or cell phone, make sure you're eye level with the screen. If you can, take frequent breaks and work on your posture. Carol Pearson, VOA News, Washington.
So pay attention to that posture. And that's our health report for today. To stay in touch, find me on Twitter at Lenore Moudou. Esther, do you pay attention to your posture?
I'm going to try to do that from now on. Thank you, Lenore. Great information right there. All right, thanks. Be sure to watch Lenore Moudou's health reports every Tuesday right here on Africa 54. And that's our show for today. Be sure to watch Africa 54 on our website at voaafrica.com. From all of us here in Washington, have a good evening.